Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up your seatbelts, ready for a flight. And it is story time with the villagers. So guys, do you know an aeroplane which got lost while above in the sky 10 years ago with more than 230 people on board? Do you know that?
What?
And do you know that this plane simply vanished without trace and never to be found again? Do you know that? And this was one of the greatest mystery in the history of aviation. And the answer still lies somewhere above in the sky or somewhere at the bottom of the sea. But no one has the right answer to date. Now, it is the night of March 7th, 2014 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Being a Friday, it is a holiday in this Muslim country. You get it? So at the airport, numerous flights are scheduled for that evening. And on the scheduled board, there is a scheduled flight of MH370. This flight is under Malaysian Airlines. And this plane is scheduled to leave at 12:25 a.m. Malaysian time. So the plane that is going to take this trip is Boeing 777-200ER. And one of the major prides about this plane is that it is one of the most reliable planes ever to be used. It never had any major incidents, and the pilots considered that this type of plane is one of the best aeroplanes in the world. You get? So its pilot has been flying for Malaysian Airlines for 30 years with 18,000 flight hours. So this pilot, being 53 years of age, his co-pilot was 27 years, but he started flying at the age of 20. So they had extremely steady experience in flying business.
Hey, this is really so interesting. Now, so tell us what followed.
Now, it is 22 o'clock or 10 p.m. in the night. The pilot and the co-pilot safely passed through the security gates before getting onto the plane. Everything is okay. Nothing to report. Next is the 10 hostesses and stewards of the Malaysian Airlines. They also safely passed through the security. Still everything is okay. Nothing to report on. For the pilots, the day is just like any other ordinary day. Any other ordinary flying day. You get? And as usual, the pilot and the co-pilot, they take note of the flight plan, observe the list of the cargo or freight, look at the weather in which the weather was so good that day, then go through the passengers list and everything looks good. So at exactly 11 p.m., 1 hour later, passengers bound for Beijing are invited to join the departure lounge of MH370. Boarding procedure is as usual as it has been, like check-in, luggage check, passport control, and so on. So at exactly 11:20 p.m., all passengers have taken their seats in the Boeing 777-200ER. So passengers have been sitting one by one until the plane is full to its capacity of 227 passengers. So the plane is having different kinds of people ranging from Orientals, Chinese, Westerners, Malaysians, including the French people. But notably, in the plane, there was a French family living in Beijing. That was a mother, a daughter, a son, and his girlfriend on board. They sat on the same row at seat numbers 25, D, E, F, and G.
So, are there any more notable passengers in the plane?
Yeah, there is also a rather unusual group of travelers on board. 20 Chinese and Malaysian engineers working for the same company called Freescale. It is an American company which is very advanced when it comes to electronics. Also, remember at seat number 11C, there is another American engineer, name withheld, who was also sitting there.
No, you tell us more about this flight.
Before we go further, let me take you back a bit, back to an overview. The Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 was an international passenger flight operated by Malaysian Airlines that disappeared on Saturday 8 March 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia to Beijing Capital International Airport in China. So the flight was over the South China Sea, never to be seen again. All 227 passengers and 12 crew members aboard were presumed perished or dead. So the disappearance of flight MH370 was one of the deadliest incidents, or maybe I can call it the deadliest incident involving a Boeing 777, and one of the deadliest catastrophes ever in aviation history. Not forgetting that also the search for the missing airplane became the most expensive search in the history of aviation.
What happened next exactly?
Now, it is on 8th March 2014, 25 minutes past midnight, in Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The plane is about to leave. People are flocking in and out of the airport, coming in and heading out to various destinations as a usual airport routine. You get?
Okay.
So passengers are on board in the plane. The crew is on board in the plane. The control services know the schedules and departure time.
Of course.
So at some point, the pilots now asked for the permission to move. They asked for the permission to get out of the airport. So everything is closed. Precisely, the doors are closed and the plane is allowed to prepare for a takeoff. So it is assigned track number 32 as departure lane. And by 12:30 a.m., the plane is allowed to take off.
Yeah.
And it takes off normally. No problem of any kind has been identified. Everything is completely perfect as expected. So the plane even reaches the cruising altitude. And some of the passengers are even dozing off, showing that everything is cool.
Comfortable.
So meaning now the plane is on the move and normal.
Yeah. At 12:41 a.m., the Malaysian time, the Malaysian airline flight 370 is off above the sky on cruising altitude of 30,000 feet. And remember, the plane is from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, as I told you earlier, heading to China, where it was supposed to land by 6:30 a.m. So the journey was to take 5 hours and 34 minutes, consuming 37,200 kilograms of jet fuel. Though the aircraft was having 49,100 kilograms of fuel, meaning that fuel was more than enough, because with that fuel reserve included, the jet was still going to survive 7 hours 31 minutes more, enough to divert to alternative airports in case of any issue while airborne.
Yes, yeah.
So at exactly 26 minutes after takeoff, that is between 1:07 a.m. and 1:19 a.m. Malaysian time, at that time, the plane was now above the South China Sea, and the last communication from the radar to the plane was like this: Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Now, the answer from flight 370 also answered that good night, Malaysia 370. That is it. So afterwards, the Boeing 777 continues on its normal course with all flight settings correct. It flies at around 11,000 feet above the sea level, 11,000 meters rather, above sea level. At a speed of around 850 kilometers per hour. And if all goes well, it should land in Beijing on time.
So everything was moving according to the plan.
Here comes something. At 1:21 a.m., the time when the plane is supposed to enter the Vietnamese airspace, the plane Boeing 777 loses all contacts to the ground. The plane had disappeared from the ATC, air traffic control radar screens. There was no longer any contact between the ground and the plane. The controllers no longer know how to reach the crew in the plane. So the radar had stopped seeing the plane totally. So at 1:38 a.m., there comes a situation whereby the plane is isolated from the world. It couldn't be figured out whether it was a problem of weather condition like a storm which could have damaged the engine, which forced the pilots to divert. No one knew.
Oh God.
But remember, it is always a rule number one for the pilots that whenever you have a technical failure, like engine malfunction, you immediately land on the nearest airport.
Yes.
Not just an airport, no, the nearest airport. So according to a specialist at that time, it was like if that plane had done an emergency landing at that time, then it could have landed in a disaster.
Yes.
And one of the nearest places that it could have landed was the Christmas Island. So information about the lost plane was then shared across whoever concerned and whoever not concerned. But one puzzling thing was that if there was some kind of plane crash, then why didn't even one of the passengers try to communicate using a cell phone?
For sure, I'm seeing this is a very complicated situation, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is even Saturday morning in both China and Malaysia. No one is aware what is taking place. In China, many people are getting ready to go for work. Others are on their way to the airport. And despite the hour in the morning, families and friends have come to the airport in China to welcome their loved ones from the daily flights of the Malaysian Airlines coming from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So the landing schedule for this Boeing 777 Malaysian Airline is at 6:30 a.m. The plane has not yet arrived. The plane is somewhere above in the sky and nobody knows. Not even the best aviation specialist could decode where the plane is. But remember, the normal citizens are unaware of what is taking place. And remember now, there is a Frenchman called Gisli Waterloos. He is also in a plane from Paris to Beijing to go and reunite with his family, which had gone for a 2 weeks vacation in Malaysia. So this family was in the plane Malaysian MH370, as mentioned earlier, and they were a mother with her daughter, a son, and the son's girlfriend, as I mentioned earlier. So in Beijing, there is also an American woman waiting for her partner Philip Wood, who was passenger number 171, coming in this plane, flight MH370. So the wait for the loved ones, family and passengers begins. The plane is not seen arriving. Seconds pass, minutes pass, and the situation began to look more and more serious. That's when everyone started thinking that, wait, something unusual is happening here.
And what exactly was happening with the officials at the airport?
Back at Beijing Capital International Airport in China, those waiting for the passengers are in the dark. I mean, no one is understanding what is taking place. But at the same time, airport officials weren't also understanding where the plane was. So they decide to pass the information that the airplane's arrival has been delayed and it will be kinda late.
Okay.
But even when some of the waiting for the passengers decided to inquire from both sides, there was still no answer from both sides in Kuala Lumpur and in China. It is now 10:30 a.m. There is still no news of MH Flight 370 anywhere, which is more than 4 hours since the time that it should have landed. So the display board in the airport in China, it is still showing that the plane is delayed. That's when shortly the officials come in for a press conference. And as they are about to speak out, no one is quite sure as to what they are about to say. And that's when it was made clear to whoever in the airport at that time that flight MH370 under the Malaysian airline has lost contact from the ground, and technically it had disappeared.
So tell us, what exactly was the cause of the plane's disappearance?
It may look like for several hours no one cared about the plane's disappearance, but much efforts were made. If I may take you back, even at one point, the captain of another Malaysian aircraft, Flight 386, heading to Shanghai, China, upon receiving this information, he attempted to contact the crew of Flight 370 shortly after 1:30 a.m. in the morning. He was using an international air distress frequency, but all calls were unanswered according to satellite data unit. Therefore, that's when the air traffic control decides to use a secondary radar which relies on a signal emitted by a transponder. The term transponder is a combination of a transmitter and a responder, making a wireless communication whereby it picks up and automatically responds to an incoming signal. So this method was used to search for the airline 370, but every effort was futile.
And what was the alternative?
At the point that the transponder stopped functioning, the Malaysian military primary radar came into action. And the only option that remained to track the plane was by using a military radar. And that is when the military radar detected that the airplane was sharply turning away from its original northeastern route and instead heading west with a ground speed of 496 knots. That is around 919 kilometers per hour. It was also crossing the Malay Peninsula, and by exactly 2:22 a.m. Malaysian time, the military radar could not also trace the plane. The plane was out of range at this point because it was over the Andaman Sea, 370 kilometers or 200 miles northwest of Malaysia. So before the Malaysian Flight 370 transponder was thought to be turned off, the plane had been detected having passed through Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam according to their radar systems respectively. At this time, no one had an idea where the plane was. The plane had disappeared.
Meaning there was no more hope of finding the Malaysian aircraft again.
Listen, when it looked like there was no more hope of finding the aircraft anymore, therefore something more needed to be done, you get it? Something interesting happened.
What?
At 2:25 a.m. Malaysian time, the aircraft reappears, but this time through communication. The aircraft satellite communication system, ACARS, sent a logon request to the ground station, and by the help of a company called Inmarsat, it made 2 ground-to-aircraft telephone calls. That was around 2:39 and 7:13 a.m. Malaysian time, signifying that the aircraft was somewhere airborne, but not known where exactly. But suddenly, both calls were unanswered by the cockpit. So by 8:10 a.m., that is 1 hour and 40 minutes after the aircraft was expected to land in Beijing, it was still thought to be somewhere airborne, but still sending satellite communication, but nowhere to be seen, not known where it is. So by 8:19 a.m. to around 9:15 a.m. in the morning, that is the last time Inmarsat tried to make efforts of communicating to the cockpit. But all attempts were still unanswered.
And what is the situation at the airport?
Fast forward again. It is exactly 12 p.m. or midday at Beijing Capital International Airport, more than 11 hours after the aircraft disappearance. So the flight is still reported as to be late.
Yes.
The loved ones who are waiting for the passengers are crazy worried. The airline company gathers them and takes them in a hotel, gathers them there near the airport. So the situation is gradually growing to be absolutely traumatic. People are screaming, crying. Journalists are all over. to get the news of what is going on.
I know.
Even the CEO of Malaysian Airlines by then, Ahmad Yahya, shows a face of helplessness. Hours passed and the mystery deepened. So it looks like the Boeing had simply disappeared.
Yes.
Even qualified experts in air disasters and causes had no clue or no answer on what exactly had happened and how the machine such size, big like that, had disappeared just like that. So it was unthinkable because that plane is a flight monster. It was 63 meters long, 60 meters of wings width, and 350 tons weight.
It was big.
It was full of computers, electronics, and complicated communication system. How could it get lost just like that?
So tell us, which circumstances made that aircraft get lost?
This was the matter. There was no communication from the crew, nor the aircraft communication system that relayed any distress signal, indication of bad weather, or any technical problem before the aircraft vanished from the radar screens. Imagine with 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board, and according to the AAIB, Air Accidents and Investigation Branch, and Inmarsat, the satellite data provider, the airliner's last position before it disappeared was in the South Indian Ocean, and no places in existence there where it could have landed. So the aircraft was still nowhere to be seen. This was already the deadliest and mysterious incident in the history of aviation.
So, who were exactly on board the Malaysian Flight 370?
The aircraft was carrying 12 Malaysian crew members and 227 passengers from 14 different nations. Also on board was 14,296 kilograms of cargo that was feared perished. But according to the flight manifests, on that day of disappearance, the passenger list later revealed that there were 2 Iranian passengers traveling on a stolen Austrian and Italian passports. The stolen Austrian passport was bearing the names of Kozel Christian, passenger number 63. And stolen Italian passport was bearing the names of Marialdi Luigi, passenger number 101. But then, incredibly, it was later found out that the 2 men never boarded the plane, Marialdi Luigi and Kozel Christian. They were later found in Thailand by police and they were arrested.
Okay.
And it was later discovered by CCTV video review at the airport that the Italian and the Austrian were replaced by a 19-year-old Iranian and 29-year-old Iranian. 2 people. And even more disturbing detail was that the 2 men bought the tickets at the same time with the stolen passports. So the 2 Iranians were immediately singled out at Kuala Lumpur International Airport security. And it was thought that these 2 Iranians were having serious criminal intentions. And they were the ones that may have hijacked the plane, you get it? But after thorough background check, it was later discovered that these 2 Iranians were not actually having any terrorism history or association with terrorism. And therefore, just like any other Iranian, they were just trying to migrate to Germany.
So could it be that the pilots who did something either to sabotage, suicide or something?
Of course, now all our eyes were on the pilot Zahari Ahmad Shah and co-pilot Farid Abdul Hamid as suspects for this incident. First, the co-pilot Farid Abdul Hamid is a 27-year-old young man and incapable of hurting anyone. For him, this flight was a big deal because it was his first without a training instructor. However, the investigation would later show that some mistakes were discovered with this young man. For example, when at one time he seemed not to take strict air regulations seriously. So this was a testimony from one of the hostesses who never flew with them that day, but said that at one time in 2011, during a different flight, co-pilot Farid invited her at the cockpit while flying, and she was there till the plane landed. something which is strictly prohibited by the regulations. On top of that, the pilots were talking and smoking, turning all their attentions to the hostesses while flattering. He was kind of a bling boy, Farik, bling boy, who liked celebrities and celebrity life. So it was observed that even before the plane disappeared from the radar systems, that co-pilot Farik may have tried to call a mysterious correspondent who is unknown to date.
What about the pilot himself?
The pilot, Zahari Ahmad Shah, was a 53-year-old pilot, very experienced, with dignity beyond any kind of suspicion. Only by digging in his life, the investigators discover a number of issues. When they searched in his home, the police seized a flight simulator in his house, which is not a bad idea to have it, since he used to show it off on his social media handles, using it to teach people on how to fly online. So the problem was not having a simulator. The problem is that the Malaysian forensic investigator later discovered that some data in that simulator was deleted.
Okay.
So when the data was later recovered, it was discovered that time and again he used to practice on how to land on very short runways. So it became intriguing. Did he try to hijack the plane and landed somewhere on a small island within the Indian Ocean? Why was he trying to practice with his simulator to land on short runways? So the Malaysian authorities thought that there was another hidden reason as to why he was practicing to land in such a way. Using his flight simulator, of course, you get. So maybe also they asked themselves another question, that could it be a suicide mission? Still nobody could crack this puzzle because still pieces were not adding up.
But wait a minute. Were there no witnesses anywhere who saw anything happen, maybe in the sky or something?
First, before anything, the search had already begun. From that exact location where the plane lost signal from the ground. And of course, that's when several witnesses came on board to give account on what they might have seen. For instance, a fisherman claimed that he had seen an unusually low-flying aircraft off the coast of a place called Kotabaru in the Maldives. Also an oil rig worker who was 186 miles, that is around 299 kilometers, southeast of Vung Tau, claimed he saw a burning object in the sky that morning. Another fisherman reported witnessing an aircraft crash near a place called Malacca Straits. But all these were just eyewitnesses' accounts, and it could not be established as to whether the accounts were true or false. Even 3 months later, a British woman sailing in the Indian Ocean claimed to have seen an aircraft on fire. So the mystery was growing more deeper and deeper.
What happened next?
So after it was established that the Malaysian Flight 370 has disappeared, the search and rescue effort was officially launched in Southeast Asia, basing on the initial communication between the initial satellite and aircraft. But still, nothing was seen. So 1 week after, they moved to southern Indian Ocean between March 18th and April 28th, 2014. The search operation included 19 vessels and 345 sorties by military aircraft, searched over 4.6 million kilometers square, that is around 1.8 square miles. It is like searching through the size of DRC and Algeria combined. And remember, those are the two largest countries in Africa. That was the size. But still, the aircraft was nowhere to be found. So, the experts decided to use the bathymetric survey and sonar, special equipments for searching underwater and the sea floor, you get. So they searched as far as Southwest Perth in Western Australia, but still they found nothing. Remember, At this time, 3 governments were involved in the search. That is the Malaysian government, the Chinese government, and the Australian governments, which later rose to 9 countries, but still, the plane could not be found.
So did they give up the search?
No. From the year 2014, the search for the lost Malaysian Airlines 370 went on to as far as 17th January 2017. Almost giving up, the search was suspended. The search resumed again with no evidence anywhere of the lost aircraft. So by 30th June 2017, the search had a total cost of 155 million US dollars.
Oh my God.
And the underwater search accounted for 86% of the total cost of the search, but still nothing was found. Everything still remained a mystery.
Was that all?
No, that's not all. In January 2018, the private American marine exploration company Ocean Infinity resumed the search for MH370 in a narrowed 25,000 square kilometers area using the Norwegian ship Seabed Constructor. So the search went on increasing, and by May 2018, they had covered 112,000 square kilometers, that is around 43,000 square miles, using 8 autonomous underwater vehicles covering the size of Togo and Ghana combined. By 9th June 2018, the search was also concluded with no success. Remember, searching efforts by Malaysia was also through the Gulf of Thailand, South China Sea, Strait of Malacca, Andaman Sea, the Bay of Bengal, Northern Arc from northern Thailand to Kazakhstan, Southern Indian Ocean, west of Australia, Sumatra, but still the aircraft could not be found. The search was still close to nowhere.
But did they try to use any more powerful technology?
All sorts of technologies and terminologies were used during the search, like the use of ULBs, underwater locator beacons, that coordinates with the flight recorder. The TPL, the towed finger locator, that coordinates with the cockpit voice recorder. So they used both the hull-mounted hydrophone and handheld hydrophone in the search, among many others. But also bear in mind that in the search, there was the use of ships, speedboats, planes, helicopters, and so on, but still nothing was found. The search still remained to be a study. Nothing was found.
Did the search end?
The search never ended. In March 2022, Ocean Infinity committed to resuming its search in 2023 or 2024, pending approval from the Malaysian government, of course. So in 2023, Ocean Infinity was reviewing data from the previous 2018 search to ensure that nothing was missed.
Wait, since 2014 to date, they could not find anything, even a debris.
Of course, many debris were found that was linked to the lost Malaysian Airlines 370. For instance, the first item of debris to be positively identified as originating from the flight 370 was the right flaperon of the aircraft, discovered in late July 2015 on the beach in some place called San Andre Reunion. It is an island in Western Indian Ocean, about 4,000 kilometers or 2,200 miles west of the underwater search area. Also, a damaged suitcase that might be linked to the flight 370 was also found. A Chinese water bottle and an Indonesian cleaning product were also found in the same area, and the analysis done in France suggested that the debris could have been from the missing aircraft. But meanwhile, in Mozambique, an object bearing a stenciled labeled "No Step" was found off the coast of Mozambique. Early photographic analysis suggested that it could have come from the aircraft's horizontal stabilizer or from the leading edges of the wings. So analysis from Australia also suggested that the debris could be from the missing flight 370. And therefore, more aircraft debris were found in South Africa and Tanzanian coasts in which Malaysia's transport ministry confirmed that the debris was indeed from the missing aircraft. So part of the debris were found as far as the island of Madagascar. But remember, in all air disasters, debris are always found eventually.
Yeah.
But what is new with this case, it is that for over a year plus, no part of the Boeing had been located by that time, either by boats or by searching experts. So even the black box was nowhere to be traced. So this gives this story a mysterious character.
Yes,
Wasn't there anything odd discovered during the search?
There is one thing which was discovered. The plane might have moved above an island called Diego Garcia Military Base. This military installation island, found in the Indian Ocean, is the most guarded place in the world, owned by the United States of America.
Yes.
And nothing unresponsive can be allowed to fly past that area, since it will be shot down.
Okay.
It is sometimes observed that since American silence is deafening since the start of this mysterious disaster, there is a possibility that this Malaysian airplane might have tried to fly above the San Diego Garcia military base, and the plane was brought down, killing all passengers on board. And since this could have resulted into a mistake done by America for shooting down a plane carrying civilian passengers,
Yes.
they decided to remain silent over the matter. Yet they are usually the first one to come through over any matter.
Yeah.
They have a culture of investigation. They do the lead, then they search for the truth. But this time, they did nothing. So they are known to be correctors of all wrongs, among others. Though this is just an observation from commentators, it is not necessarily true.
Meaning America's involvement in this accident at Diego Garcia wasn't true.
It is hard to tell, but according to conspiracy theorists, they claim that what puzzles the relatives of the victims of the Malaysia airplane disaster is that 7 weeks after the Malaysian airplane disaster, President Barack Obama went to Malaysia. Yet an American president has never visited Malaysia before. Then 9 months later, Barack Obama invites Malaysian Prime Minister to US to play golf. And you know, this is one of the very few privileges that can be granted by the US president. So that is not a problem. The problem is, what did those two people talk about? Is there something wrong which happened at San Diego Garcia that people don't know? So that question remains with the concerned commentators and conspiracy theorists.
So, and that was it.
Yeah. Even in an official report, the Malaysian authorities finally declared that flight MH370 ended up somewhere in the middle of the Indian Ocean. This aroused the anger of the passengers' family, friends, and loved ones, saying that there is something that Malaysian authorities is hiding from them.
I know.
So 5 years after a long search and investigation, the concerned authorities and safety investigation report from Malaysia, ICAO, came up with a conclusive report that the team is unable to determine the real cause for the disappearance of MH370. But to some observant, the truth is not about to come out in the open. Let's wait and see. Maybe one day the truth shall prevail.
Yeah.
Though, let me tell you, this remains to be one of the deadliest catastrophes ever in aviation history that involved the most expensive search in the history of aviation. And ladies and gentlemen, unbuckle your seatbelts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because we value all our subscribers. And wait for more stories like this. All we can say for now is bye-bye.